It's time for Twig This Week in Google. Jeff Jarvis is here. Stacey Higginbotham. We'll talk about the self-driving car from Uber. Is it the end of the line? We'll talk about Facebook. It is the end of the line. And Congress has done a shameful thing. It's all coming up next. Are you surprised? On Twig.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twig. Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by CacheFly. CacheFly.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 449, recorded Wednesday, March 21st, 2018. Grackles, Nuthatches, and Swifts. Oh my. This Week in Google is brought to you by WordPress. Reach more customers when you build your business website on WordPress.com. Plans start at just $4 a month. Get 15% off any new plan at WordPress.com/twig. It's time for Twig This Week in Google. Although, maybe we should call it TWIF this week, or TWICA. With us, Jeff Jarvis, City University, New York, professor of journalism, BuzzMachine.com, author of What Would Google Do, Public Parts, Geek-Sparing Gifts.
First day of spring.
First day of, full day of the vernal equinox, and the snow came a-tumbling down. You got Toby out your window.
It's snowing.
Hello,
Jeff, you want to
Toby.
see out my window?
Yeah, let's see out Stacey Higginbotham's window.
Here we go.
She's
Here we
in the
go.
beautiful Austin, where,
shush.
Hey, I didn't know you looked out at that beautiful view while you're doing
beautiful.
the show.
It is.
No wonder you can tolerate us.
Wow. Do you have those strange little Austin birds on that tree?
The Grackles?
Yeah.
Strange for their name only. I mean, I don't think
they're ginormous, creepy, evil birds.
Oh.
I don't have
Oh, no,
them.
there's the little ones. Lots and lots of little ones.
Oh, the little sparrow type birds?
Yeah.
the Swifts.
Nuthatches? Swifts? I don't know.
Yeah.
Tiny little birds?
Oh.
I don't.
You have birds?
I'm just going to make this up. I do have birds. And
Grackles
squirrels.
and Nuthatches and Swifts. Oh, my. It's Grackles and Nuthatches and Swifts. Well. Did anything happen this week in tech news? Anything at all?
Nothing. It's been really boring. Nothing's happened. Everybody's been happy doing neat things, moving to the future. Yeah. Yeah, it's a new world, you know. It's a good new world. And it's okay. It's fine.
So,
I want to do a countdown. Actually, let's start this show with, let's do a countdown until how long Jeff says techno panic.
Moral
Because I'm
panic.
pretty sure we're going to hit it in this
I tried to beat you
episode.
to it. I thought you were going to say moral panic.
Oh, close.
So there was a very good New York Times, the Daily yesterday.
It was actually an Observer Guardian that they gave to the New York Times. Is that the one you're talking about?
Well, it
main
was in
story?
their podcast. So
sorry.
it was the Daily, but it may have. But yes, Observer had the story, of course.
Yeah.
Broke the story, and it was a whistleblower, Christopher Wiley from Cambridge Analytica, who went to the Observer. But I thought a very good synopsis of this, which I will kind of attempt to rehash, because I think before we even talk about Facebook's culpability in all this, it'd be good to understand what exactly.
Yeah, a lot of the coverage has been way wrong, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for Facebook to parse breach versus not breach, but it does make sense for us to get the facts right.
Yeah. So this began, Christopher Wiley, we'll start with him. He was the whistleblower. He was a high school dropout from BC, from Canada, who became fascinated with data, big data, when he was volunteering at the Obama campaign in 2012, and was very intrigued by what data would tell them about reaching out to voters, you know, how to advertise to them, who to advertise to, and all of that stuff. He was following an interesting study, and I'm trying to remember if that was from Cambridge or somewhere else. I think not. Where some researchers found out that if we get 50 of your likes, 50 of your likes, we can tell what race you are. We can tell what education you have. We can tell a lot about you. Give us 500 of your likes, we'll know more about you than your spouse does. And they were able to do that by correlating it was a kind of imperfect system, correlating likes were scrapable. I think they still are scrapable from Facebook. You don't have to have permission to see what people like. It's in there. It's right there on their profile. So they would basically get as much of that like data as they could and see if they could find correlations. And this is very different from you or me. I mean, one of the things they found out, for instance, if you like Hello Kitty, what did they? I don't even remember, but it said something about you. It was that you were a nice person, but not a rule follower, something like that. So you could deduce all of these things, and they did this again by taking great lumps of data and making correlations, and then projecting out. Wiley was fascinated by this, thought this was very interesting, started doing some of this himself for the Obama campaign, and then went to work for a British company, and a group in the British company run by this was an Andrew Nix, the CEO now ousted of Cambridge Analytica. They realized that they could do a lot more if they could get more access to the Facebook data, and this is where the story became very interesting. Nix ran into somebody from I think it was the Cruz campaign, the Ted Cruz campaign, and decided that it would be great to get into the American market, and decided that if they could do a little bit better targeting, that they might be able to do this kind of targeting they were already doing in the UK, in the American market. Got the attention of billionaire Robert Mercer, who funded it, Steve Bannon, who became the chairman, and created Cambridge Analytica. And Cambridge Analytica this is the thing that they did that really has gotten them in trouble with Facebook, is they've found a researcher at Cambridge who created a psychological quiz. And they put out on Facebook an offer. If you take this quiz, it was a real quiz. It was not a Game of Thrones, which vegetable are you kind of a quiz. It was a real psychological profile, standard kind of profile. If you take this quiz, you'll have to download an app and take it offline, off Facebook. We'll give you some money. We'll pay you. And they got a significant number of people to do that through Facebook. So they had their Facebook login and they had the quiz. They were able to use the data they gained from that quiz to, and it was about a quarter, I think 275,000 people.
270,000.
Yeah, to create this, what you really need in this, a machine learning database, in effect, making correlations between what the Facebook profile told you about this person and what their psychological profile was. And they also got something which Facebook shut down a few years ago, which is this friends of friends stuff, which I always thought was reprehensible. If you take a quiz or give somebody access to your Facebook account, they not only get your information, your likes, but they get all your friends' information, all your friends' likes. Basically,
by the way, Leo, just to clarify here, that's your public information. They don't get anything that's behind.
No.
Private.
No, not credit card numbers. It's stuff you've posted.
Yeah,
they get access to their accounts, though. They don't have to be. You didn't
have to have your own relationship at that time. You didn't have to have your own business relationship or relationship.
And that was how people thought Facebook worked. I mean, I think everybody thought Facebook worked is people can see my page if I allow them to. If they friend me and I friend them back, then we are sharing data. But as it turns out, if they friend you and you friend them back, then anybody who friends them can see your data, which was
at the time.
That was something Facebook stopped a couple of years ago.
And by the way, just real quickly, I worked with lots of media companies that said goody goody and did that like crazy. Yep. Obama's campaign had a game that had 1 million users and did the same thing. Yep. And so it was very common at the time, but it was all part of that kerfuffle that we talked about in the show at the time about people not understanding the circles of privacy.
We have been talking about this for years.
Yes.
And trying to raise people's awareness of this for years. So Cambridge Analytica got all of this data it turns out once they got the 270,000 people to take the quiz, they got their friends of friends, and that ended up being a 50 million person database. None
of which should have been handed over to Cambridge Analytica.
Well,
but
it's
no.
It isn't that they shouldn't have access to it. They got legitimate access to it, saying it was a research.
They kept it for too long.
The rules said you couldn't pass that on to a commercial entity.
Right.
And it was passed on,
so
and they were told
Cambridge
to erase
researcher who had ties to Russia, by the way, was actually passing it along to a commercial entity illegally. Right. Facebook
against Facebook's
their
rules.
Not illegally, but against their rules.
Yeah.
And then Cambridge Analytica used it apparently quite effectively to target advertising. And Wiley was saying,
so they say. Which is a whole other
there's been a lot of question about,
as to what
and we've seen now the videos of its CEO admitting to all sorts of chicanery. But again, they were boasting about stuff they probably didn't do in the past. So there's no way of knowing if they actually do hire prostitutes to suborn candidates and things like that.
And it's also, there's debate among researchers. I was at a Annenberg event at Penn some weeks ago, where most of the researchers in the room said that they did not believe for a second that Cambridge Analytica had any near the skills that they say they have. Again, that's irrelevant to this discussion insofar as things that shouldn't have happened, but how much impact it then had is something that could be up for debate.
A lot of people say, hey, Obama did the same thing. The only reason this is a hot button is because Trump used it to win and not a Democrat. Fair enough. That's fair criticism. Facebook said we understand it's a breach of trust, and we expected. This is Mark Zuckerberg's comment earlier. He said we have a responsibility to protect your data. If we can't, we don't deserve to serve you. I've been working to understand exactly what happened and how to make sure this doesn't happen again. He's going to be on CNN at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern tonight on the Anderson Cooper 360
Let's not stay
show.
on until then.
No, we'll be off by then. So Cambridge Analytica, which was first of all was not supposed to have that data, and then told Facebook they had deleted that data, apparently did not delete the data. And until Wiley stepped forward, we didn't really understand exactly what had happened. But the whistleblower, who was one of the principals, explained the whole process. So a number of people, including Brian Acton, who was one of the founders of WhatsApp and was paid $16 billion along with Jan Koum, his co-founder, for the app by Facebook, said it's time, hashtag delete Facebook. A lot of people, that hashtag's gotten very popular. I deleted Facebook, not so much because everybody knows all that information. I just don't like, it really brought home to me, something I've been thinking for a long time, which is I don't trust them. Now, we should mention, and I'm sure Jeff will mention, that you actually work with Facebook and the foundation that they do.
Just to get the full clear disclosure, I raised $14 million from Facebook, Craig Newmark, the Ford Foundation, AppNexus, and others to start the News Integrity Initiative. We run it independently of Facebook, and I am not paid by and never have been paid by any of the platforms. Yeah. End disclosure.
Yeah. The parent company of Cambridge Analytica has been banned, as has Cambridge Analytica, for all of this. So there was clearly a violation of Facebook's terms. And I think Mark Zuckerberg's taking some culpability. He's taking some responsibility for this, saying, yeah, we didn't do a great job. Although there's also the sense that Facebook is as much a victim as the end users, that Cambridge Analytica lied to them. You disagree?
That's like saying Equifax is as much a victim as the end users. I mean, this is a company that's dedicated to collecting data about people.
Well, Facebook's paying the price. They lost $50 billion in stock market value over the last few years.
Are they really paying the price? I mean,
I don't know. It depends. I mean, this is a really interesting nexus. It's kind of a turning point. It could be the end of Facebook in some ways, right? What do you think?
I'm not a huge Facebook user. I've never been, but I wouldn't be. We need to have something like Facebook.
Do we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think we do.
Why?
I think
what
that we should have.
Connects people.
Yeah, but I mean, I have a phone and an email and mail. I could connect to.
It connects people superficial. It makes superficial connections feel more accessible. So it helps you scale your connections, I would say. So
that may be the fault. That may be it's one of its flaws, though. By the way, because they're not genuine connections.
Maybe.
I don't know. I think they can be genuine connections. I mean, if you use it well, you can create communities. You just have to you have to curate them in a way that a lot of people aren't very disciplined at. I mean, think about how sophisticated people are and different types of people. I don't have a lot of close friends, for example. I'm not a huge Facebook user, not because of that, but I think those things are correlated. And there are lots of people who seek others' approval, and those people tend to be on Facebook and establish, I would say to them, meaningful relationships. And I'm not going to denigrate that. And I think it's something a lot of people need and want. And so I think there's a real value there. I do think it's abused, but those people are also abused in real life by quote unquote friends, frenemies, people who treat them like crap.
So you're saying that Facebook had a higher obligation to protect our data. Certainly they do have if we're going to give them that data, a very high obligation to keep it safe. Yet, after all this really was kind of Facebook's business model, but somebody took advantage of it.
But this again, but yes, all true. I mean, I think a couple of observations. One, and Stacey, I agree. I think that society needs something like Facebook. And as I wrote some weeks ago, I think that their definition of community and their definition of connections is still too shallow. And so I agree with both of you. But the data that was there was data that people shared publicly in the definition of public at the time on Facebook. It wasn't as if it was private data that was stolen or breached. That's one point. The second point is that at the time,
it was, I would say on that first point real quickly, it was weaponized. And
that's different. That's different. Yes, how it was used is absolutely different. And how it was used by those players, by Cambridge Analytica or other players, was different.
Yeah.
But people said, I like the Beatles, and there it was for the world to see I like the Beatles.
But that's a larger story that's going on right now, which is what we thought was innocuous sharing of information. Turns out, thanks to big data, massive databases, multiple massive databases, and very powerful number crunching and machine learning, to not be as innocuous as we thought it was. In other words, the kind of sharing I do in real life is innocuous, but as soon as it gets attached to these big databases, because
I'm not sure that you really. I don't think we've really seen the full extent of the definition of weaponization. Nonetheless, was it misused by Cambridge Analytica? Yes, stipulated, Your Honor. Let me make a second point real quick, which is that at the time a lot of this was going on. I think it was a general belief, and this goes after what Stacey was saying, that having a social media platform and using it to involve people, to get them involved civically in politics, was a good thing, right? What changed in that? One is this researcher misused the data and missent it to somebody who in turn misused it, and so on. The second thing that happened, let's be honest, was Donald Trump. Because I think that you have to ask yourself, do we say now that no political campaign should ever use social media? I don't think we would have said that 3 years ago, 5 years ago.
Did the way Obama used Facebook, was it similar to the way?
Highly targeted.
It was highly similar, targeted, wasn't it? And they had even more. They had 1 million people.
And let's not forget that if you want to start a movement like Black Lives Matter or something else, the ability to target has benefit. Targeting is not bad and evil. The sameness of mass media is what some people are trying to defend right now. And I'm trying to say, no, that's not the future. That's the past. So bad things happened. Bad people did bad things. I'm not arguing with any of that, but that doesn't make the intent or the platform venal. And let's not forget the other things that changed that we're trying to blame Facebook for, that mass media hold a huge dose of responsibility for, like polarization that fertilized this field, that allowed Cambridge Analytica and Steve Bannon to come in and plant their seeds of hatred. So yeah, I'm disappointed. I mean, we get to where Zuckerberg's statement was. I'm disappointed that all he did was deal with the tactical details of Cambridge Analytica. There's a much bigger issue here about what the public responsibility of these platforms is. They didn't ask for it. They didn't want it. There's no law about it. But in their power, they have to take on responsibility for a civil, informed conversation, for the health of the public sphere. That's the bigger conversation that's not being held, that I wish we should hold, and I'll hold Facebook and company to high responsibility. Thank you for my moment.
So along those lines, Jeff, do we need something like, can you lie? Because part of this is it's targeted, but it also targeted lies designed to get people to believe a certain way. So do we need rules and regulations about campaigning that these sorts of things would have to follow? That way it's not the platform's responsibility as much as it's the pack.
Well, Stacey, I'd like to have that rule, but every single politician lies in half their commercials. They lie when they appear on TV. They lie when they're on Twitter. Who's to become the judge of that? Who's to forbid the lie? At the level of the First Amendment, and this is not a First Amendment issue because it's a private company, but at the level of the First Amendment, you have a right to lie. You have a constitutional right to lie in this country. You can do it. People can think of what they will.
I think to
so
me,
lying is not. I don't think it's the right standard.
I think to me, it's a matter of scale. That stuff like this has always gone on. We've always had targeted advertising. People have always lied. But I keep using that word weaponized. Modern technology has changed the conversation because we have so much more data and we have so much better ways to correlate data. You know, that it is now, to me, it strikes me as more dangerous. And I think the benefit of this Facebook moment is that everybody will start to think a little bit harder about what all these companies are doing, about what information we're giving up, and about how it's being misused. I think, you know, I mean,
I would say how it's being used, period. This is actually what Kevin and I talked about. And I think let's move beyond just talking about this and let's talk about ways to solve for this. Like there are things that we know work, things like having data retention policies, getting rid of people's data after 30 days. That's like,
well, I think that's one of the things that's going to happen, right? That what you're now going to see is GDPR style regulation in the US.
It needs to happen. It has to happen because we are being asked to give up so much information. We have no insights as users what's going to happen to that information and how it could be used. We have an amazing array of frightening stories about how it could be used against us. And that's turning people off from life-saving benefits like precision medicine or I'm trying to think of things.
But that's where you're in agreement with Jeff, because that's the whole point of techno panic is that don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. So that's why I think regulations like GDPR are actually reasonable. They're measured. What the challenge is with things like GDPR is we don't actually know how we can implement that yet, because so far our technology that we've developed has all been about aggregating stuff, sifting through it for correlations over a long period of time and pulling new stuff in. And now we're going to have a technology and no responsibility for it. Now we need to develop a technology framework for pulling in data for a limited amount of time, understanding exactly and communicating back how different entities are going to use that data, and also give the user the ability to pull that back. That's a really tough technical order. And we don't actually know how to even do that yet. So it's one thing to be like, implement GDPR, but we also need to be like, okay, how are we going to actually build a tech infrastructure for those rules? Because we don't have it today.
Amen. And two sides of that coin. I think that American media companies American companies in general, brands, everybody are going to be shocked come May 1 that they're going to have to consider cutting off Europe until they get their act together. I don't think anyone's taking that seriously. On the other side of that coin,
they have, like, the big companies actually have to implement GDPR because they have offices, and in any company headquartered in Europe, even those that serve Americans will have to abide by these rules.
But I think you made the point before, Stacey, that it's the small companies that can't afford to do that are going to be affected. The other side of the coin I just want to mention real quick is, and I've made this point often on the show, but I believe the future of media is one that gives you greater relevance, that doesn't treat you like everybody else. That means I have to have data about you. Now, I have to have a good relationship with you under that data. I have to have your permission. I have to do right by it. I have to give you value for it. But I even fear now that all targeting is going to be seen to be evil and awful. And then we return to a world of everybody having, sorry about that.
It's the bat phone.
And does you have a phone that rings, Jeff?
It's a flack from Facebook who just emailed me.
Oh, they're reaching out now, baby. They're reaching out now.
Yeah.
So where do we stand on GDPR? I take it, Stacey, you think it's reasonable and not burdensome. Jeff?
No, I think the ideas are good. I don't think we actually can implement it.
Well, that's, of course, that's the concern is that these rules, I mean, we started with right to be forgotten, and it looked as if that broke the way the internet works. GDPR maybe isn't as bad, but it has similar features. Jeff, what do you think?
And there's worse coming too. No, I think GDPR the heart is in the right place, but the implementation is wrong on a bunch of levels, because as we've discussed before, and to Stacey's medical point, you can't anticipate every use of data. It's knowledge. And that's the problem I have with both right to be forgotten and this is that it's knowledge. And I think that there are ways that we can protect people and inform them and use things well. And, I always go to Amazon, which tells me why it's recommending something and lets me change that. Right? That's not hard to do. We can figure that out. We can tell people what we know about you. We can give you some. I'm going to sound like a sociologist, agency over that. We can know what the value is, and I think we've blown it horribly on the net. We being technology companies and media companies and advertising companies, in that we didn't tell you what we were doing. We didn't tell you why. We didn't tell you the benefit you had, and now we're paying for that.
So, so this is a come to Jesus moment for the big tech companies. They all are faced with not only the GDPR taking, and by the way, you don't have to have even business in Europe. You just have to have customers in Europe. So as long as they collect or process data of individuals located inside the EU, they're subject to GDPR. And that means there's responsibility and accountability. There's notice requirements. There's consent requirements. You have to have a data protection officer who manages compliance with all this. There's a lot. I mean, if you read the Wikipedia page on GDPR, there are a lot of requirements. I have a book somebody sent me on GDPR compliance for U.S. companies, what you need to do.
Do you have to worry about it at all?
No, we don't collect data on people.
Nobody.
So I don't think we store any information about you. So I think we're okay.
It's a fly-by-night operation. On the
but isn't that funny that there are very few businesses you can think of that don't, in fact, collect data on their customers.
So your advertisers collect data. That's their
not through us. So they have to do that. But
right.
not through
they don't
us.
Do it through, that's right.
We don't allow. Well, we do. We even do things that other people do. We don't allow tracking links, for instance, on our banner ads on our website. We don't allow them to do that. So I think we're in the clear on this. Mm-hmm. But I think that we're an exception. Frankly, most businesses have to face this. So,
and there's more strident legislation coming about
from
both
the EU and coming
EU
from
about the privacy stuff, and about right to be forgotten is going to expand as well.
And I have to say, this Facebook thing is probably going to stimulate something in the United States as well. And I think consumers are aware of this now, and I think consumers are concerned and want this. It is good because the threat to Facebook, which extends to ultimately to Google and Amazon as well, and everybody else, is that people will turn away from these services, realizing that they don't control their data, and whatever benefit you get from Facebook. And I would still argue that it is a small amount of benefit that can be duplicated in other ways. I don't think Facebook is you must have utility for anybody.
And I think most companies
will leave.
Yes, okay. But I think most companies are actually okay with a set of rules because those people are actually trying to behave well. And so this gives you a stick to beat people like Cambridge Analytica who are misusing data, misusing your terms of service, for example. It gives you the ability to say, hey, look, we're at least abiding by the lowest common denominator that we've set as a country. And that's actually a really big deal. I mean, that's kind of what democracy is all about, right? And so that's why I think it's good and we need it. And it also gives us an incentive to develop better ways to handle data than we have today. There's no incentive for like all these poor researchers who are trying to research things like differential privacy. They don't get gobs of funding because nobody cares about this stuff right now. But this incentivizes people to actually start caring about this type of technology that can benefit us.
Great article yesterday on Motherboard by Carl Bodie, who says, given Facebook's privacy backlash, why aren't we angry with the broadband industry? If your ISP is Comcast or AT&T and Verizon, they're collecting the same amount, same information. They don't even admit to it. They're just hoovering up your data.
And they share it with the government at the drop of a hat.
They'll give it to anybody.
I mean, these guys are nuts.
There's no transparency and there's no rules. So,
speaking of which, Stacey, you know my yes but here is reasonable regulation. I would try for self-regulation, self-governance first, and the platforms have not. Let me finish. They have, because I'm about to criticize, and they have not shown that they're going to do that well. And that's a problem, but I would prefer that as a rule. And the second problem, I'm going to get to is, okay, so let's say we agree on a reasonable scheme of regulation. I'm sorry, but I don't trust this government and this Congress and this regulatory environment to do that and do that well. I just simply don't.
I don't
no
either,
faith
but you know what?
whatsoever.
It's going to take a lot longer to get to there. So, by the time we actually, think about how long it takes us to pass legislation in this country. It is.
We can't even get a budget.
So
we're going to shut down the government again on Friday because they still can't get a budget.
I'm not as worried about that.
I'm not worried about it. It's just, those are kind of like the basic things that Congress needs to do. They can't even do that. So, forget any kind of agreement on data protection. And frankly, I also think that they realize probably correctly that voters are fairly apathetic. This delete Facebook movement has gotten some attention, but I noticed, and there'll be not something else in the news cycle in a day, and we'll just move on.
And I think this is the argument. Even Steve Varadinathan, who is publishing a book very soon against Facebook. He's trying to bring some perspective to this as well and say there's bigger issues going on right now, other things to worry about. And I don't think I think Rasmus Nielsen, who's a great researcher at Oxford, said let's bet here about how much Facebook's going to fall in usage. I don't think. However, your first question, could this be an existential crisis? Yes, it could be. They've got to take this very, very, very seriously.
And I'm sure they are. Would a libertarian approach be effective? Is there a way to see?
No.
Is there any way that we could see that I don't honestly, Stacey. I think in a perfect world, society would get together and agree that no company should keep your data for more than 30 days, that you should have the right to delete, et cetera, et cetera. But that's I don't see that happening in our lifetime. That is what Europe
has decided.
I know.
It's not 30. I don't think it's 30 days.
Not 30 days, please. Yeah, that's a disaster.
But you do have the ability to revoke your consent. You have to, a company, when they're collecting your data, they have to explain what they plan to do with it. Those are not draconian things to do.
Well,
and
we don't know
Jeff,
yet because it's not law yet how that's going to work out and whether it's going to be implemented and what's going to happen. We really haven't seen that.
Well, those are the regulations.
I know, but they're not in effect yet. And when they go into effect in May.
Oh, sorry, March. No,
May. When they go into effect in May.
Where am I?
I think it'll be very interesting when we get back here in June or July to talk about what's changed. Anything?
I had a
May
woman.
10th.
What if we put the responsibility on individuals to keep track of everything?
No, as individuals, we are tracking too much already. You cannot fight the power of a Facebook or your Equifax. As individuals, we're hosed.
Yeah.
That's a dumb solution, and I hate when people do it. They're like, and Americans buy into this so much, and it drives me absolutely bonkers. There are some things individuals cannot do. End of rant.
Yeah. You could not use Facebook, Google, Amazon. You could not, but then you have a Safeway card that tells Safeway everything you bought, or you have.
Or look at
anytime
everywhere
you use
we go.
credit, you're gonna.
Anytime you use your credit card.
Yeah.
Or anytime you go to the doctor. The doctor is pulling data about you that does get pulled into your insurance company. You can't not share your data with people.
Right, and again, we've had this discussion many times. It was Dana Boyd who taught me this list. You regulate the use of data, not the gathering of it. Gathering of it is knowledge. Use is the question. Should your doctor have all this data about you? Absolutely. Should you be refused insurance under the current law? No, you should not. Should you be refused employment? No, you should not. That's a question of the use of data. That's not the fact that it exists.
Isn't this just kind of a concomitant inevitability when you create business models based on advertising? Weren't we going to get this? Wasn't this going to happen no matter what?
So paywalls will redline quality and journalism for only the elite.
Yeah.
Commerce will bring you. Every one of them has conflicts. The question is, do you have a moral North Star in how you operate in those models?
So the data is going to be out there.
Yeah, for good reason in a lot of cases.
And sometimes for
now
good
the
reason.
Challenge with regulating use is we historically haven't done that well. Typically, we regulate things like actions, and we like bright lines, for example. So use is really hard to track because we don't.
That's the nature of law. You can't, you need a bright line because otherwise it's too hard to legislate and too hard to
And what I like about the GDPR is that it establishes a right to privacy for individuals. It establishes for them the ability to control their data. And I actually think that's the right way to go about doing it. It's not just rules about gathering data. It's a right to it's a right to privacy for your data, how your data is used and controlled and taken. And that's kind of like the First Amendment. That is a right. It's like one of those unalienable rights that we just didn't know we needed until today, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I do, and we may not have needed it as desperately as we need it in this technological age, where you can combine all these databases and you have massive processing power, and you can do so much more than you could do before.
The scale of information. Oh, go on.
What? No, go ahead, Stacey.
No, I was just going to echo Google, echo Leo.
Yeah. But scale cuts both ways, right? As I said before, scale allows everyone to talk to anyone. That is incredibly powerful. It's disruptive and it's powerful. And it means the trolls can talk too, but it's powerful. That's what enables everything we love about this net. Scale also brings the things you've talked about in data, and it brings the difficulty of enforcement of whatever standards you have. But we're at the level of scale now. We're there, and wishing we weren't isn't going to do us a lot of good. Yeah. So the question is, how do we have a discussion about the responsibility that these companies have? How do they have that? How do we teach them that? That's, to me, the bigger question. When Facebook threw out all the public content because some of it was inconvenient, it had an impact on news. That hurts not only my industry, but it hurts the informed society. Now they're trying to bring it back now, and that's a good thing. But what do we expect of them? What's their public responsibility? I had this discussion with Jay Rosen this week, who's a brilliant guy. And he's the one who emphasized to me that we don't have the terms of this discussion. There's no law that says these companies have public responsibility, though we presume they do. And I certainly believe they do. Well, how do we have that conversation? That's the higher level to have. So when Zuck writes his post today, it's just about what happened with Cambridge Analytica. We won't let that happen again. And we already cut off what's what. Okay,
it's so Zuck, because it's always a case of issue. Apologize after the fact, move on, and then it happens again, and then move on, and it happens again.
And there's bigger issues about the moral and ethical basis and culture of these companies.
If we were to start from scratch, I know this is an impossibility, but would it be possible to design a system that would protect people's privacy and yet keep us connected and give us the benefits of a technological revolution? Or is this just inevitable? It feels like it's inevitable that this is what happens. Could we design a system that wouldn't have these problems?
We don't have the incentive structure in place.
Well, I understand it would never have happened, and it's not going to happen now.
Well,
so maybe
I guess what I'm saying is,
it's a completely rhetorical question, because there's, even if you had an answer, it wouldn't mean anything. But
right. Well, so if we want to take on this thought exercise, we actually have to think about what kind of incentives we have in place in this. I mean, we'd have to go all the way to society, basically.
Yeah.
Here. So
you'd have to have people be altruists and everybody be altruists. And even if 99% of people are altruists, which I believe they probably are, it's the 1% that kills you.
Well, yeah, okay. That's a beer and brat kind of conversation.
Yeah. All right. I'm not ready I don't hold high hopes that we can regulate it either. So that's what I'm puzzled about. Is
we can't.
Leo, let me pose your question another way. Because I think this is what I've said this week too. I think that I was among many, and I think you were, and Jay Rosen was. I had this discussion with Jay. We believed almost religiously in the openness of the net.
Sure did.
And we believed that end-to-end and open was a good, and the good would come. And I think a lot of good has come, and I fear we're going to forget that. But with that, we now know fully, inevitably comes manipulation, bad actors. And how much openness are we willing to give up, and to whom are we willing to give it up, under what standards and rules? That's the real discussion that we have now with the internet. The internet is the internet. It's going to be there. It's going to connect to all kinds of things. I don't want China. I don't want a place where anyone decides what we're allowed to say and not allowed to say. That's going too far on this openness scale. pure, unadulterated openness is 4chan and 8chan, and that's not what we want either.
Do you think this kind of encourages an authoritarianism in the long run? That it in a way it's promoting?
What's the antecedent it there?
This kind of lack of privacy, and I think the reason it works in China is people want order, and the tools now that technology provides to keep order kind of encourage an authoritarianism that people are willing to accept.
The people are told by the authorities that they want order, and they have no choice but to go along with that order that the authorities provide.
Right.
So I don't think
and
you
the technological tools are there. So I just feel like it promotes authoritarianism. By the way, Facebook is culpable for a lot more than just this. Look at what they did in the Philippines, where they really kind of facilitated the election of Duterte and now support him. He's shut down the free press, but he uses Facebook Live to stream.
Right. I go back to what I said before. We thought that involving the citizens in an open platform of civic engagement was a good thing, and oops. Yeah, Maria is the bravest journalist I know. She's phenomenal. Maria Ressa, who's on the screen right now. And these are huge issues. So what of this freedom we gained, John Perry Barlow, are we willing to give up, and to whom?
Does Facebook have no? So Facebook, in an attempt to be politically agnostic, helped all the candidates in the Philippines, and then when Duterte won with their help, they support him because he's the leader, because they're trying to be politically agnostic, and yet they're supporting an authoritarian government with some pretty vicious policies against its people. So
set the rule. Set the rule.
What is the rule there? And where is Facebook's culpability there? I think that's far more offensive.
Then I'm going to make you set the rule. So if Facebook in the U.S. or the Philippines or wherever, should Facebook cut certain candidates off from access to the tool because
Jeff,
they are bad
now
actors?
You're talking about use as opposed to an actual to gathering, for the example. So you're actually right now arguing for a use case thing as opposed, and then calling for, or sorry, you're calling
pushing back on Leo is all I'm doing. I'm pushing back on Leo. Who's saying, I get where you're going, Stacey, but and we've had that argument before.
But it relates here. That's the same sort of mental.
You're saying it's an
argument.
illogical thing. No, yes. But I'm just simply saying to Leo, if he starts at the use, he starts at the use and says Duterte or Trump, and I come back and I say, okay, then write me the rule that you want them to live by.
Well, yeah, right. What do you do? That's my. What I'm saying is this is an endemic. This is a structural problem with any company like this, because the company's going to say, well, we're not going to choose sides. So then they end up.
I disagree. No, they are right now. Okay, so I'll give you the three cases where they are, and this is what's really interesting right now, and where I think we need to help them. As I've talked about before, Google now accounts for the reliability, authority, and quality of sources in search ranking. They side with science. Twitter came out with its new thing saying, okay, we realize we can't be fully open, and they're asking people in their RFP to say, help us decide the standards that they're going to live by. Facebook is at least bringing back quality news. They are making decisions now. So all I'm saying to you is help them write those rules. Those rules you want, help them write them. Whether they're written by government or by Facebook, you, the citizens, should not just be standing back and saying, well, Facebook, you messed this all up, go fix it. No, you've got to help.
So here are my rules. I want to know exactly what data they're collecting about me. That includes how far that data, my relationship with people and what that means for things. I want to understand who else gets access to that data and how. I want to understand what those companies are trying to do with the data. I want to understand, I want the ability to stop my data going from someplace that I think is awful or unethical. And that may mean when I try to load an app to take a stupid quiz, that a little pop-up says, hey, by the way, this is run by such and such, and the data they're going to use from this is going to be used to infer your political leanings. And then I'll be like, weird. I just thought I was thinking about fruit or liking Hello Kitty.
Right.
And so those are what the GDPR offers. And I would like an easy to understand platform for that. But those are the rules, Jeff.
Okay, I'm cool with that. But going back to Leo's question, how does that stop Duterte? How does that stop these other things? There's that's the personal data piece. That's a slice, and it's fine. I think that's a very good, I could quibble with a little bit of it, but I generally agree with it. Set of rules and standards. Now take that across a lot of other areas, like political action. If the Nazi who's running for Congress in Illinois now comes on, should Facebook, good example, should we expect Facebook to say, no, Nazi, you can't use us? Where's that line?
So then I would say Facebook needs to establish a policy about how it shares information on people with their governments. Part of the issue here is, and we're going to encounter this again and again, is in America, we have different standards. I'm not saying people in the Philippines are really excited about getting killed for having, minor drug possessions, because I'm pretty sure they're not. But if Facebook doesn't share data with a regime, and maybe we do something with the OECD or the UN or the what is it called? The World Economic Council, where you have a standard of authoritarianism, maybe, and you say, hey, if you fall below this on the scale, we're not going to share our data with you. Period.
Okay, so let's let Stacey, I'm just going to push back. This is good. So you're Twitter now, and not an issue of sharing data at all. It's just providing a platform for the Nazi candidate. Should they say, no, you do not have the right to be here? I'd be okay with that, but we have to understand what that standard is. It has nothing to do with data now at all. It's about allowing that person to have the same service that everybody else has, but you're going to cut a line. I'm fine with making that line. I think we have to make those lines now, but we have to help, as norms, as society, help make those lines.
I don't think Facebook did this on purpose, but I think they inadvertently created a platform that is incredibly intrusive. And I think they've known about this for years. This is an article from 2013, from almost 5 years ago in the National Academy of Sciences proceedings. We show that easily accessible, this is, by the way, the article that started the whole thing. Easily accessible digital records of behavior, Facebook likes, can be used to automatically and accurately predict a range of highly sensitive personal attributes, including sexual orientation, ethnicity, religious and political views, personality traits, intelligence, happiness, use of addictive substances, parental separation, age, and gender. They used 58,000 volunteers. They found out things like liking Sephora and curly fries would tell you something about your intelligence. I mean, it is
curly fries, yeah.
It is counterintuitive. It's extremely powerful. It's based on big data. This was 58,000 people. Now try it with 50 million people. And the problem with these models is they get better and better and better as we add more and more data. This is the Facebook's likes platform. That's it. Nothing else. Facebook basically created an incredibly powerful tool, which can be used by dictators, demagogues, and nice people alike.
And it's not just
what's their responsibility at this point? Do they shut it down?
Let me read you a quote from Ev Williams at South by Southwest. When we built Twitter, he said, we weren't thinking about these things. We laid down fundamental architectures and that had assumptions that didn't account for bad behavior. And now we're catching on to that. It's not just, the data is just one tool. Distribution is another tool. The social push of groups to lie and harass is another tool. These are all things that get enabled. They get enabled by printing presses and telephones too. They get enabled at a different speed and scale now. And we the internet geeks, we said openness. So the rules they operated under were our rules. John Perry Barlow, God bless him, may he rest in peace. Those were our rules. We said openness. We said net neutrality. We said all these things. Now, with experience, we're changing our minds. Okay, we can. But I don't think we can stand back and say, well, they ended up creating this horrible tool. They created it under our specs. This is the internet we wanted, the open one.
With Facebook,
Facebook is actually more controlled. Facebook is more controlled and more civilized than Twitter right now because it has controls that we balked at. Why is Facebook choosing what I see? Why are they censoring people? They got all that kind of crap, right, in the day. And now we're saying, well, now they're not doing enough of that.
Well, the first thing everybody should do is stop doing likes and delete your likes, because with 95% accuracy, you could predict somebody's race, 93% their gender. With 88% accuracy from somebody's likes alone, you can predict whether they're gay or straight. 85% accuracy, Democrat versus Republican. These, I don't think anybody looked at likes and said, I'm going to be able to get with this kind of accuracy. And by the way, this is a relatively small sample set. I can do this kind of stuff. So,
well, Leo, no. If you go back to Yankelovich,
did you know?
70s,
Did you know when you were doing likes that this would tell people what your sexual orientation was? When you were liking Hello Kitty or curly fries?
Guess what? The same thing happens to you when you buy products at the grocery store and it's in your cart.
Right.
Exact same thing it has for years since the 70s. This is not a new technology. Different scale, but it's hardly new. It's been used for years.
And I mean, we do it as people. We make inferences all the time. I'm very curious.
Yeah.
Like, I like both Sephora and curly fries. I'm like, does that mean I'm intelligent or not intelligent?
Well, that's actually, they don't say.
They don't say. So
intelligence, by the way, is one of the harder things to predict.
My daughter loves Hello Kitty. Does that make her? She is not a rule breaker.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of yes in aggregate, but we
the
make
best
those
predictor
about
of
people all
high
the time.
intelligence are you ready?
Yes.
Thunderstorms, the Colbert Report, science, and curly fries. Low intelligence, Sephora, I Love Being a Mom, Harley Davidson, and Lady Antebellum, which is a country group. Good predictors of male homosexuality included, of course, the No Hate campaign, but really, you would think that kind of thing would be the most obvious, but it's not. MAC Cosmetics and Wicked the Musical. Strong predictors of male heterosexuality include Wu-Tang Clan, Shaq, and liking the group being confused after waking up from naps.
So there's obviously some bias in there too, I imagine. So looking at the things that correlate to low intelligence, I see a lot of things that are related to women. Makeup. I love being a mom, not Harley Davidson. But you associate that with possibly country in the South.
No, but this isn't. No. Nobody's making a qualitative decision. What they did is they took 58,000 people. They took all of their likes. They had them take a personality inventory test, answer questions, and then match the two. And we're able to find these correlations. This is with a small set.
Don't rush over Stacey's point. No, Stacey's making a very good point about the biases that are set up, whether it's an IQ test or whether it's an SAT or whether it's this.
That's possible.
There's huge bias.
That gives me hope.
How we define
it's the first time I've been happy about bias
is biased.
Right.
Well, and that's something that we don't talk about when we talk about data. And that's something, I mean, okay, we do talk about it, but we're not talking about it here. And there's an interest. I mean, there are ways that bias is going to filter into how things are targeted.
Yes.
They're going to be mostly accurate. Could they be more accurate if we didn't have, racist, sexist people sometimes doing these things, or I shouldn't say that people making maybe unintentional racist or sexist assumptions. I don't know.
Yes.
Although, curly fries and Sephora. Dang it. I don't know where I fall in intelligence now.
You want to take the website's still up. My Personality Project is at mypersonality.org/wiki.
Stacey, look what you're both doing. You're going to go take this thing you've just been decrying.
We've just been panning. That is true. I'm like,
let me at it. Let me at it.
By the way, they now have 6 million test results paired to 4 million individual Facebook profiles, which means that their psychometrics are, well, within the bias of the test, even more accurate.
And this is part of like this whole idea of, as human beings, we crave validation. And my God, we're just going to go find it wherever we can. And places like Facebook are awesome for that. I don't know. Are we going to talk the whole show about this, though?
No.
There's a lot of Google news, too.
Let's wind it up. But I guess we know what the harm could be. We can think of what the worst things could be out of this. I don't know if there's a way to fix it. It's certainly something that we're going to all grapple with, and especially these big companies as they're under fire. I mean,
we're in a new society, and these are not easy questions. And my only problem with the discussion, not the show, but in general now, is it's being treated as easy. Oh, Facebook screwed up society, and they can fix it. It's not easy. It's not simple. It's not their fault. That's dumb. And these are hard questions. And I'm as critical as anyone, and I wrote a post about this, that Facebook is not grappling with these huge questions of public responsibility, and that they must deal with radical transparency. They must deal with their own culture and their ethical bases. They have to do these things, and they're not doing them yet. And so I'm holding it to a very high standard. But just the Cambridge Analytica story it's an old story, actually, and there may be better things to talk about.
Our show today brought to you by WordPress. Now, here's something I can get behind. Something that's nice. It's happy. It's all about you sharing under your control on your website. It's not your Facebook page. It's not your Twitter account. It's your website. There's a reason why 30% of all the websites in the world run on WordPress. It's the best platform for putting you out there in a way that you control. The freedom and flexibility to share your voice, your work, to share it your way. WordPress.com, it makes it easy, too. They do the hosting. They give you the templates. They've got the great customer support team there 24/7, Monday through Friday, and on weekends, too, to help answer any questions you might have. You don't need to be a geek. You don't need to be a coder or even a designer to do a great-looking site that works for you at WordPress. Go to WordPress.com/twig for 15% off your brand new website. They've got e-commerce, buttons, options ranging from a simple buy button just next to one thing or donate button to a complete online store. They can do the whole thing. Plans start as low as $4 a month. And WordPress makes it easy to expand your reach with built-in SEO, social sharing. So even if this isn't your Facebook page, your readers, your customers will share your stuff on their Facebook page, which is awesome. Go to WordPress.com/twig. You got to have a place on the web that's yours, that you own 100%. That's it right there. WordPress.com/twig to save 15% off your brand new website. Find out why 30% of all the websites in the world, including mine, including some of the best publications in the world, run on WordPress. WordPress.com/twig. We thank them for their support. Google's buying Lytro, or at least that's the rumor.
Reports have it. Didn't we talk last week about how the next version of phones might have 2 cameras separated?
A lot of them do, and we
speculated about that
computational stuff. Yeah, Lytro was a camera system that gave you multiple focal planes. It was a very kind of a weird, expensive, limited in some ways camera. It was a multi-camera technique, and according to multiple sources telling TechCrunch, they may have acquired Lytro for a bargain basement price somewhere between $25 and $40 million. Lytro, which had been struggling, was shopping itself to Facebook and Apple. Not all according to sources, again with TechCrunch, not all employees are going over. Some have already received severance and parted ways with the company. It sounds like it's an acquisition of Lytro's light field patents and other digital imaging technology. They have 59 patents.
It's a very cool technology, but not something you use every day, right?
Yeah.
I was very excited when this came out. I was like, oh, cool tech. I mean, it fits all the cool tech buttons. So I'm glad, it went to Google that appreciates cool tech and doesn't really care too much about markets. And they're going to do something cool with this eventually.
Yeah. And there may be
talk about.
There may be other applications besides just camera technology, maybe VR applications, AR applications as well. So it's interesting stuff. Go ahead. What did you want to talk about, Jeff?
I just said Google. I was at the Google event yesterday here in New York where they announced tons of things to try to help news,
including buying the Chelsea market
and keeping the scones in place.
They're not going to get this. Are there really good scones down there?
There's good scones there.
The first floor, I guess, is an actual market, right?
It's a little too hip for normal people, but it's like me. Yeah.
Is it too hip for you?
It's too hip.
It must be really hip because I feel like you're pretty hip.
Really hip. It's really.
He wears black and everything. He lives.
I know. I'm like, look at that nicely trimmed beard and the little floof in his hair. I feel like, Jeff, you got some hipness. That's not an insult. I'm just like, you're a put together person.
Are they gonna now? So I love this statement from David Radcliffe. I would want to call him Daniel Radcliffe, but that's Harry Potter. From David Radcliffe, VP Real Estate and Workplace Services at Google. It's been 18 years since Google New York first established our single-person sales office in a Starbucks on 86th Street. After moving from 86th Street to a more official space in Times Square.
So what year was 18 years ago? Do some math for me first.
That was
2000 staff until then.
2000.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's 2018. That's easy math. I can do that.
Yeah, I got that.
You did it better than us. Current home is at 111 8th Avenue. They've been there since 2006.
An entire city block. It's huge.
Wow. But now they are buying the. They had some space in the Chelsea market. They're going to keep the people who are there. I guess won't be kicked out, including the retail and food hall. But
the first floor is all the retail stuff, and nobody wants that to go away, including Google employees, even if they can eat for free.
Yeah.
And it's very nice. It's really
there are
nice.
other people leasing parts of that building, but I guess Google will use it as an opportunity to grow within that building.
Yeah,
that's good. Is it mostly sales? It's mostly salespeople though. It's not programmers.
No. The YouTube performance space is there.
Yeah.
No, the New York office. I mean, the thing about Google is they shift pieces of development around the world. I mean, Munich and Vienna,
so
there's huge development pieces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's developers in New York. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Large teams focusing on projects including search, ads, maps, YouTube, cloud, technical infrastructure, sales, and research. So, yeah, a lot of it. What else did they announce?
So they announced the Google News Initiative. So that's why that's of interest to nerdy, geeky me. But it was an impressive set of announcements. Among them, and they've talked about a little bit of this before, but an effort to help with subscription-based publications. I always worry about the non-subscription-based, but for those subscription-based publications, they launched with 17 pubs, including McClatchy, New York Times, Washington Post, I think Le Monde, Reforma in Mexico City, and others, Telegraph, and FT. And what it means is that if you have a Google sign-in and Google payment, you come across, you hit a challenge to subscribe at a publication, and you can be given model subscription. In 2 clicks, you're done. You don't have to create a new account. You don't have to create a new password or passport. You're using your Google sign-in thenceforth. Now, Google then knows you're a subscriber, but there's a benefit to that. Google will also promote content to which you subscribe. So you see the carousel of news that occurs now. Under that, there's going to be a My Subscriptions carousel. So if you subscribe to The Guardian and the Telegraph and the FT and the New York Times, then when you search on a topic, news from those publications on that topic will now be promoted to you. So that's good for the publications, and one hopes for the user. They'll also, third thing on this is they're going to predict using data. They're going to predict who is a likely mark for your subscription pitch and say, hey, go after Stacey. She loves you. And they won't be telling you why they made that decision, how they made that decision. They won't be, sharing the PII with that, but they share the conclusion, and one hopes they will do that in other areas. So that's a big thing that they did. They're also putting $3 million into a news literacy campaign. That's another story. They're also doing a lot about trying to bring AI to newsrooms by making it a lot easier, and those same AI stuff that anybody can use. They put money behind First Draft, which is this wonderful organization that did the election land that was at CUNY during the last election, and that also did the cross-check in France during the French election, to really bolster their efforts for fact-checking and quality news. They're saying that finally, I think this is finally, that they're working in breaking news situations. They realize the problem that somebody's going to throw some crap, the young people at Parkland were paid actors, and that kind of stuff will come up. So when they see a breaking news situation happening, which is vulnerable to this kind of manipulation, they're going to then bias known authoritative sources in trending and such, so they don't get taken by bozo. That's less a problem on Google News and certainly search. It's much more of a problem, and remains a problem on YouTube. And they've got to worry about that. So it was a whole raft of things. They say that they're spending $300 million over the next 3 years on this. There was a little confusion where people from the stage called that a fund. It is not a fund. Europe has a 150 million euro fund. US and the world do not. But Google says they're making substantial investment. End of my report. They took out a hip space in New York. They brought people in from all around the world, flying people in from India and Australia, publishers, to see this. It was a very interesting and marked contrast from the view toward Facebook and the view toward Google right now this week. But Google did a good job, and Richard Gingras and company deserve a lot of credit, I think, for showing that they listened to publishers. They collaborated with publishers. They're trying to help publishers. There's more we want them to do. There's more that they ought to do. That's fine. They're going to try to improve advertising. They're going to try to do other things too. I want them to work with us on user data and how to do it right under GDPR. But it's a very good, big step to helping news. End of report.
And now Peter Kafka's contrasting point of view. He says,
no, you take me down from my high of a happy world. No, you got to bring it back down.
No matter how hard Google and Facebook try to help publishers, they'll do more to hurt them because that's the way they're supposed to work. They're built to eviscerate publishers. They're aggregators. And that's all there is to say about it. $300 million over 3 years. It's about 1%.
Google will tell you, as they did, that they succeed when their partners succeed. They need the publishers. They need them for the content. They need them for the distribution of the ads. And they share huge amounts, billions of dollars of revenue with their distribution partners of their ads. And yeah, guess what, Mr. Kafka? The world has changed utterly. And maybe publishing and journalism are obsolete institutions that ought to be rethought. But we won't go into that right now.
Well, since Peter's not here to defend himself and I don't really have the stomach to do it, I'll just...
No, you don't. Neither do I. And certainly not as Stacey. Stacey's saying, when does this end? This is a
where's the
different
chat?
kind of
What happened?
Actually, I have the huge story of the week coming up in just a second. But real quickly, in the related vein, Subscribe with Google has been launched.
That's what I just talked about.
Okay,
yeah.
So
that's it.
If you want to do, that's part of this. So if you want to do it, what do we do? Do we just get the
when you get hit by the subscription
go through
wall?
Google. Yeah,
you will go through Google. By the way, the FT presented some really interesting data. They did a lot of experimentation with Google. Sorry, Stacey, in 2 more minutes. Where they saw if
they have a big paywall. The FT does. Financial Times does.
Paywall. Yeah. So Google could look at the funnel and who was interested in the FT, who was coming in, and they could monitor that for the FT. The FT looked at the bottom of the funnel and saw that they tried giving people 3 free pages a month, and what happened? And then they went down to 1 free page a month. It pushed up the conversion, but they lost the people coming into the funnel. They lost the prospects. They tried 3 pages. That was a week or a day, but then they went to a month, 3 a month, and and they played with it, and they realized they've got to segregate people into 3 categories. People who are just coming at the beginning, you get lots of free stuff because we want you to get a habit. Then you start getting a little too habitual, we're going to cut you back and try to push you. Then you come back all the time, boom, no, you're getting the wall. And so Google is working with the publishers on this kind of data to figure out how to make that operate. And I think it's a good and healthy partnership.
I'm going to move to a shack in the forest and disconnect from everything, but I still think I'll have a working toilet. But other than that, just moving away from it all.
No electricity?
No. The electric company's spying on me.
This week with Thoreau.
They actually can tell quite a bit of information.
I know they can. It's son of a gun. So here's some bad news. I actually maligned Congress. I said they can't get anything done. In fact, they have gotten something done. They've passed SESTA FOSTA by first of all, by 97-2. Who are the 2?
Who's going to vote against stopping child porn? And that's where we are.
But it doesn't. In fact, it overturns Section 230.
Which is awful.
Which protects online platforms from liability for some types of speech by their users.
Including publishers, we might add.
Yeah. So if somebody posts something horrible in a blog comment, the blogger is liable.
This
no
is
longer
awful.
Protected.
Well, so what's going to happen? Let's all take a relaxing chill pill for a moment. What'll happen is we'll get a use case that is not sex work related. They'll sue. The courts will either carve out an exception or they'll send this back to Congress and say, yo, you screwed up. Fix it.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back. Because, yes, the first time someone comes in, we'll see a good test case. And it is painful. I'm not saying this is ideal, but this is kind of where we are as a people.
By the way, the law is retroactive.
What?
So even more opportunity for you to sue. So it's aimed at sex trafficking, but of course, when you overturn this safe harbor protection, it means all sorts of stuff. Sad to say, IBM and Oracle, companies whose business models don't rely on 230, were quick to jump on board the bill and support it. So was the Internet Association, because big internet companies aren't going to have too much trouble. It's the little guys who are going to have to put up with this. Yeah, we'll watch. This is EFF's article if you want to read more about it and understand. It is passed through both the House and Senate, so it just remains to be signed before it becomes a law. Elliot Harmon, How Congress Censored the Internet, published today on EFF.org.
And because we're paying attention to the wrong things sometimes. But what do you do?
Pay no attention to this, Sesta Fosta. Look at it. Look at Facebook. Ah! Okay.
See?
Oh, I was thinking about look who's been fired lately from, the cabinet / White House.
Well, that too, right? That's a great circus. Thank you, Twitter. Google, actually, this is an interesting story. Google has created an open source VPN anyone can install. But there's one guy who's not too happy about it. The guy who invented it in the first place, or something an awful lot like it, Dan Guido, launched a project that gave you a VPN, in easy to set up VPN in late 2016. That is very similar, but I don't know. Maybe, who knows? And the more the merrier, right? So Google's is called Outline. You could run it on your own server, but if you don't have a server, DigitalOcean makes it like a one-button install, Rackspace, Google Cloud Engine, EC2. And it'd be easy enough to set up and then have a VPN that you could trust. And as we've learned, a lot of these big VPNs are not so trustworthy as we thought.
You know what I would and
go ahead,
I don't know if this works, but my hate, the reason I don't have a VPN, I don't hate it. That's way too much, but it breaks a lot of my geographically based functionality. So my television, my Amazon Echo. And so I wish there was like a VPN plus a masking service that said, hey, so I could say, hey, I want to be indicated that I'm in Austin or I'm in Texas at this level.
Actually,
is there a service like
you
that?
can do that with Tunnel Bearer.
Okay.
Well, you could do it with this.
You can say where you want to be.
You could do it with this. If you ran this VPN on a home server, it would identify itself as coming from the house. And then you log into it from where the outside world. The idea is it protects you when you're out and about, but still gives you, local.
Well, see, I want something on my house that protects me against ISPs looking at all of my data from my connected devices.
Right. Yeah, Tunnel Bear might do that. Although, I don't know.
I just don't want to. Okay, yeah. This is because I tried VPNs in the past, and I'm like,
I always try them.
Many aspects of my life.
It slows everything down.
Yeah.
Leo, I think they were pushing this VPN thing as a way for journalists to be able to
that's
talk
one of the
safely,
uses for
confidentially,
sure.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's all encrypted.
It's a privacy tool. Well, maybe I shouldn't assume that everybody knows what a VPN is, but the idea is it creates an encrypted tunnel between you and the server, so that where you are is hidden and the data you're exchanging with the outside world is hidden until it gets to the server. At that point, it has to enter the outside world. That's why if you run it out of your house, it'll look like it's coming from your house. And many people use commercial VPNs, but the problem is it's hard to know what their privacy policies really are. We just yesterday on Security Now had a report on, I think, 3 different well-known VPNs that were leaking information, IP address information, stuff like that. I think this is
talk about news again, because I have to go do something really fast.
Okay, go do it, and I will talk about some news.
Let's talk about what Stacey really disagrees with.
Oh, man. All right. Bye.
How about, I like this, at South by Southwest, YouTube announcing that they're going to use Wikipedia to verify claims on conspiracy theory and other YouTube videos.
They're going to link. I don't know why people haven't fit about this.
But they didn't mention anything in Wikipedia about it.
Well, because they're going to link to them. When did anybody ever say, hello, Wikipedia, I'm going to link to you?
Right. Okay.
We'll just link to them.
Fair
I don't
enough.
understand what the fuss is. I think this is an example of people trying to find any angle. And there's problems on YouTube. There's problems galore, and Wikipedia is probably not the solution. But linking to Wikipedia is not an evil.
No. I think maybe it was the way Susan Wojcicki said it, as if it was a partnership, as opposed to just maybe linking to it.
They don't even do partnerships. You link to them.
Yeah.
Google's been doing that for ages.
She said, well, I wish I could find the quote. It's the New York Times. It says she would enlist Wikipedia's help. It's not exactly, if you link to it, it's not really enlisting their help.
No, it's not.
No. But maybe that's the New York Times. I don't have the quote in front of me. So she says YouTube will soon begin experimenting with what it calls, quote, information cues, end quote, sourced from Wikipedia. The cues would appear as captions and article links beneath videos that deal with topics related to popular conspiracy theories like the moon landing and chemtrails. People who were interested in chemtrails wanted to know more about the moon landing. I don't know.
Did you see Zainab Tufekci's piece a week ago? I don't think we talked about it last week.
I brought it up, but maybe it was on Twit. Yeah, I thought it was really good.
No, actually, we did talk about it. Never mind. We did.
We did talk about it here. Okay.
We did talk about it. Yep.
Remind me again what she was talking about.
She was saying that it intensifies the interest, and so if you start a vegetarian, it takes you to vegan.
Oh yeah. The YouTube escalates your.
It escalates, which in one way can make sense. Oh, you're interested in that? I'll give you more and deeper. And the other way, it's obviously bad.
But that's the thing about all of these algorithmic things. They all make sense. Absolutely, to the algorithm. It's all about increasing engagement. If the algorithm is to get more clicks, it works.
It's also to deliver more value.
Well, it delivers value. The problem is computers are terrible at context. So I can walk into a library. We actually, just a few days ago, walked into the library, my daughter and I, and my daughter asked for a book for young adults. She's like, I'm really into mermaids. Do you have any books on mermaids? And so the lady brought us to some graphic novels about mermaids and some other stuff. And then
that's why librarians are great.
They are,
right. But if my, but she didn't bring up the weird sex things about mermaids because she knows whereas YouTube's like, oh, you like mermaids? A lot of people really like this one.
That's exactly right. And that's the problem is that the algorithm's doing everything right. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's just that the consequences or the side effects are not well understood or thought about. And
they just don't have human context. Humans, no context. Computers have no common sense. They're computers.
I'm sure this is out of context, but another South by revelation. This one from Liar Cohen, the YouTube's global head of music. The people who treat YouTube like a music service, passively listening for long periods of time, are going to encounter more ads. You're not going to be happy after you're jamming to Stairway to Heaven and you get an ad right after that. We're doing that, he says, so you'll subscribe, so you'll pay. The headline, YouTube will frustrate some users with ads so they pay for music.
I see nothing wrong with this.
Okay, good. Right, nothing wrong.
Well, I don't. I mean.
No. Hey, you've been listening for 4 hours. We're going to give you some more ads till you pay.
That's business. Sorry, I can't see why someone would be frustrated by this. I can see why someone might be like, dude, that sucks. But
Yeah. I pay for it. I'm the first
We're giving you something free. Yeah. It's not free.
The new service will frustrate and seduce users of YouTube's free service. It says
frustrate and seduce. Wow, that's some loaded language
it's a
right
carrot
there.
And a stick. That's the whole thing. Or I guess a stick and a carrot.
It's just like life.
Life frustrates and seduces.
Yeah.
So
they will, in time, Cohen says, appreciate the advertising. Everyone is drunk on the growth of subscription. I don't know what Lear was smoking before he went up on stage. Okay. YouTube Kids apps.
Uber.
Yes, go ahead.
Uber. I find this story obviously
we could
really
talk about
interesting.
this. Yeah, this is really interesting, the way it's being treated.
Exactly.
A self-driving Uber night before last sadly killed an Arizona pedestrian. It was about 10 p.m. in the dark. The Uber car traveling at 40 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone had a safety driver. Neither the safety driver nor the car saw the woman or stopped. They didn't try it. There's no evidence that braked at all. The woman was struck and killed. She was walking her bike across a 4-lane street, not in the crosswalk. After reviewing the video, Tempe police told the San Francisco Chronicle, no one could have avoided this. Driver or a self-driving car, she came out of the shadows so suddenly, there was nothing anybody could do about it. Of course, because it's a self-driving vehicle that killed a human, Uber immediately suspended all of its self-driving vehicle research indefinitely. And I imagine, I haven't seen it, but people are calling for the end of self-driving vehicles. I don't know. Do you blame the self-driving vehicle?
Okay, then don't say that. Don't say that. That was massive speculation. That was bad behavior right there.
I'm sure somebody is. I just don't have anybody in front of me doing that. But
well, let's not give them the time of day.
You don't think anybody's saying, "Oh, see, this is why we shouldn't have self-driving vehicles"? That's kind of the tenor of all the coverage was.
Well, that's what we're setting expectations for. That's on the media.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, someone died. I think people would be legitimately freaked out. I think it's fine to say, hey, this happened and we don't love it. Let's talk about what happened.
Right.
Just like if someone hits a child, that's terrible.
Well, that's the next thing that's going to happen. An autonomous vehicle will, at some point, some kid will dart out in front of an autonomous vehicle. It'll hit a kid. And you think that people will be smart enough to say, well, there's nothing you can do about that.
Will we also do this? The statistical view is that in 5 years, when there's half the cars are autonomous vehicles, and we've gone from 6,000 pedestrian deaths to 3,000, will anyone notice?
The first thing I thought when I heard the story, and I didn't hear anything more than the self-driving car hit somebody, was there's only two possibilities. The self-driving car malfunctioned, or she jumped, she was not visible. She came out from between two cars or something, and there was no way it could stop. And because I trust the cameras and I trust the braking and I trust all of that much more than I trust a human to notice it and respond appropriately. The car's going to respond immediately as soon as it notices it. So I actually do trust the self-driving car more than the human.
Now, did you have a sense of Uber car versus Google car? Who would have done a better job?
Well,
No.
I thought that Uber, I didn't think about its technical prowess, but I was like, oh, it'll be interesting to see how Uber handles yet another blow to its
Well, that's the point. Yeah. So maybe because some of it's because it's Uber, but it wouldn't be the same day.
It's
I'm
a
sure
headline.
Cars hit 100 other pedestrians and killed them.
6,000 pedestrian deaths a year.
Okay. I'm
but
sure.
it is a legitimate headline.
That's 20 a day.
Oh, it is. Oh, absolutely, it is.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
but it happens 20 times a day. You don't see that headline 20 times a day.
Well, okay, it's a legitimate headline because this is a new thing.
Right.
What you're trying to do is shade it in this tone that I don't think a lot of people.
Okay, I'm wrong.
You're implying a tonality that I'm sure the occasional person might have, but I don't think that's the mass.
So nobody
tonality.
blames the autonomous vehicle for this. This is just normal. This is
Well,
okay.
I think people were like, hey, this happened. What happened? Let's get information. That's the first thing I was like, whoa, this is a big deal because this is the first thing that happened. How did it happen? And once I found out the car was driving at 40 miles an hour, I had a friend who actually hit somebody who was crossing a major thoroughfare at 10 o'clock at night outside of any crosswalk. And you know what? My friend hit her, and it was horrible for her.
Right.
This was the kind of thing that could not be solved.
On the bright side, the car isn't going to feel bad in an autonomous vehicle.
Oh, too soon.
I'm sure the safety driver feels pretty bad.
But the safety
even though
driver probably does feel bad. Yeah. He says the first thing I noticed, there's cameras everywhere. So the first thing I didn't know anything was wrong until I heard us hit her. So it's very sad.
Yeah,
it's very sad. I'm not in any way minimizing.
Well, it's worse because she was apparently homeless, and she had a bike loaded up with stuff and wasn't paying attention. Obviously, she went right in front of a car, and it makes it. But also the other problem is, it was a homeless person. And
I actually didn't know she was homeless.
Much.
I actually
that's what.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and so here's some interesting things to think about, right? When you have this sort of thing happen in an autonomous car, we're going to have instant data about what happened.
That's true. We have video from front, back, everywhere.
Good point.
Yeah.
And so there's interesting things about liability, but it also, like right now, the NT, National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, is out there. Those things take like 18 months to resolve. So when can we start expecting the speed of investigations on these things to, have that information come out in an authoritative way that hasn't happened before? And I think that'll start shading coverage a little bit too.
Actually, here's I really actually like this take from Curbed. Really, the problem is that we've built our cities in favor of cars more than humans.
Yes.
The
This is a
cities are not
common thing.
pedestrian friendly at all. And if you've ever been in these Arizona streets, they're big, wide. There's a 4-lane, street through a city, through a town. I mean, there are all these big streets. This is look at this intersection. This is an intersection that favors This is a browser that doesn't favor me. I hate Chrome. Or is this Edge? I hate them all.
Jesus, you're hating everything now.
I'm hating everything. Well, look what it's doing. I can never show anything anymore. It just freaks. It's only on Twitter it freaks out. It doesn't like Twitter for some reason. I'll zoom in.
Well, you don't
here.
either. Maybe it's taking on your biases.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, this is clearly an intersection that favors cars more than humans, right?
Let's count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lanes just in that one part.
Yeah. So I think that actually is if I would not mind that story. I was worried that there would be all this, and you're right, there hasn't been. So I was worried for no reason that there'd be backlash against autonomous vehicles because of this. But there it doesn't seem to be. Moving right along. What else do you want to talk about?
I saw some other things that were interesting, I think. What was it? Amazon. I thought the numbers, this is not a number, but the numbers on what video has done for Amazon. A leaked memo from 2016 says that Man in the High Castle, which cost $72 million to produce, drew in 1.15 million Prime subscribers.
Right.
So that was a subscriber acquisition cost of $63 for $99 cash from the users, and God knows what
it paid off right away. Yeah.
So you see why
profit
content has value again if it sells subscriptions.
This is actually also an interesting graph from that internal document. Amazon evaluates TV shows by their cost per first stream, the price to hook a customer on Prime. They divide the show's production and marketing expenses by the number of people who stream that program first after signing up. So if you sign up for Prime, the first show you stream, so the Grand lower is better, obviously. Grand Tour, number 1, then The Man in the High Castle, number 2. Bosch, these are presumably shows people signed up to Prime for, although I don't think that's always the case. For instance, Bosch shows up with a big logo whenever I go to Amazon Prime, so that may be why it got a lot of hits. Hand of God.
It's also a book.
It's a book. People who like the book might have gone there.
I'm curious how much of these shows are based on kind of books or reader type, like people.
Well, the Grand Tour brought people in because the BBC canceled it and it moved there, and that had a built-in audience. Man in the High Castle was a book, got a lot of attention. It's not very good, nor is Bosch, in my opinion, my humble opinion. Hand of God, Goliath, Mozart in the Jungle, Bosch Season 2, Man in the High Castle Season 2. That's interesting. Season 1 did much better for both of these. Sneaky Pete and Good Girls Revolt.
If it's the first thing you stream, I imagine that you would do Season 1 first. You sign up and you watch Season 1.
You don't just smart. Of course. You don't start in the middle.
I don't know. Maybe so.
You don't start in the middle. You start at the beginning.
What?
Of course. See, this is why computers will never be better than Stacey.
That's right. There's your title for the show.
Yeah, it's not. It's obvious. You ask me for some mermaid videos. I'll show you some mermaid videos.
I'm not going to trust mermaid videos.
Amazon's adding a fingerprint reader to its Key app. That's not for the person who's got access to your home. That's for you. So
is it for the app on? So is it just to?
It's only on Android.
Yeah.
Access it? Yeah. So somebody can't get your phone and let people into the house, I guess.
Yay.
Yay.
I still would not let an Amazon delivery person into my house.
No way. Google's now letting you download a handful of programs without downloading them. Or maybe I should say.
Well, it's only if it's Fuchsia, right?
No.
This is down PWAs.
Yeah, it's basically PWAs. It's actually something Google announced long before that. Remember, they announced it at Google I/O a couple of years back. The idea that
Google Play Instant,
and now it's games. They've had some other instant apps. So essentially, it's like try before you download Final Fantasy 15, A New Empire, Panda Pop, Clash Royale. It's a big deal because in the past these instant apps were limited to 2 megabytes. Games 2 megabytes isn't enough, so they've increased the maximum file size to 10 megabytes. It's funny because they announced this so long ago, and it's finally kind of materializing. But PWA, I think, in the long run, is going to replace this.
Wait, what is PWA again?
Progressive Web Apps.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The web page that acts like an app, because the one makes the web page act more like an app, the other makes the app act more like a web page, but they basically come together. But isn't that the essence of Fuchsia? This whole notion of a drawer and downloading is now just gone, and you just do what you want to do when you want to do it.
A system built for instant apps on steroids, according to 9 to 5 Google. Fuchsia, which we're still not kind of really clear what the plan is for Fuchsia. Does it replace Android? Does it replace Chrome OS? What is it? What does it do? Mostly because the Fuchsia today is not very capable. But you do run it on a Chromebook, right? So maybe it's to replace Chrome OS. I don't know.
Oh, I was hoping for explanation. I saw this story and I was like, oh, I can't wait for you guys to explain Fuchsia to me.
It's just another operating system from Google. It's early days yet. So the most important thing, though, is these processes will be completely transparent. It looks like Google is building Fuchsia. This is 9 to 5 Google writing, so that when users know what they want to do next, Fuchsia will be happy to accommodate. You don't have to have the app. This is all kind of modern. I think Fuchsia really is designed primarily to be a modern OS. And I think this is actually smart of Google to be doing this. I don't know if other companies are doing the same thing, but
I'm sure every company has to have some sort of effort like this, because
the problem is it takes forever to write an operating system. A build from scratch operating system, which Fuchsia is, it's already 3 or 4 years old, and it's not even close to being a real OS. So
think about chip architectures. ARM's been working for 5 years on their brand new architecture, and we won't even see it in products forever. So an OS is, the closer you get to the bone, the bare metal, the closer, the harder it is.
You're building.
How long since we've seen a new OS in the world, right? We used to have them all the time.
Yeah, forever. What was the last new OS you saw? BOS. 20 years ago. I can't think of Mac OS has been around longer. Windows has been around longer. Linux has been around since 1992. They all evolve and change dramatically.
Yeah.
But
you saw the Red Hat maybe sold.
Sold to whom?
Maybe Google. What was that? I saw that.
Oh,
today.
That's interesting.
Red Hat.
That's really interesting.
It is really interesting. Not Red Hats, Google.
Hats for sale.
See,
Only
Google has
red
to know
hats
more about
for
me
sale.
to know that I wouldn't be looking for red hats. Red Hat could be a Google target takeover. It's purely speculation.
Interesting.
Who wrote that article?
This one is from WRAL TechWire.
Oh, where Red Hat is.
Oh, wait, hold on. No, the author.
In Raleigh.
Let's see if they're credible.
Rick Smith.
I don't know who this person is.
It's that's the local TV station where Red Hat is in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle.
Bloomberg News is where this is a rewrite of a Bloomberg.
Oh, it's a Bloomberg story.
Okay. So here we go.
I trust Bloomberg. I trust Bloomberg.
Well, I can tell you who wrote it at Bloomberg. I'll tell you who.
In the dancing,
I'll tell you how smart they are.
In the dancing on their grave department, Amazon's considering buying some Toys R Us stores.
I don't think this is a dancing on there. Yes, it's crap to go to Toys R Us, but part of that is just it was crap to go to Toys R Us. It's always easier to buy from Amazon.
There have been a lot of articles recently saying, don't blame Amazon for Toys R Us bankruptcy. They were going to die anyway.
There's a real interesting issue, though, with private equity firms buying into retail chains with physical stores, inventory, all of this, and then putting a lot of debt.
Racking up massive debt to do it, yeah.
Same thing happened to media. This is exactly what happened to the newspaper business.
It's why Cumulus and very nearly my own company, iHeartRadio, both Cumulus did do Chapter 11. iHeart was this close to Chapter 11. They were able to renegotiate their deals with lenders. But yeah, these companies were hugely leveraged.
Right, and that used to make sense in a world where there were not options. But it's like so I think there's actually a cool story here, and I know some people have reported a bit on it. When your distribution costs come closer to zero, you become more flexible and less reliant on physical infrastructure from a store or printing press, for example, way. What kind of model works for a private equity firm going forward? I don't know.
I think my money's on CryptoKitties.
$12 million.
$12 million. I
kitties.
put this one up there. I was amazed by it. And then look at who invested in it. Andreessen Horowitz, Union Square Ventures.
Wow. So CryptoKitties is a blockchain game where it's like a virtual creature game where you create a virtual creature. Actually, you buy virtual creatures and then deck them out and then sell them. And CryptoKitties have sold for as much as $200,000. Virtual. They're virtual. They're not real. It's really all speculation, right? In fact, at one point, they were so popular, they accounted for 30% of the volume of trading in Ethereum. Yeah. Former founder of Coinbase, CEO and founder of AngelList, Mark Pincus from Zynga. Some big name investors putting $12 million into CryptoKitties. They're here's the story from VentureBeat. CryptoKitties isn't much when it comes to gameplay. You can buy a kitten with Ethereum and hold on to it. You can breed kittens, which have different visual features dubbed traits. Some of the traits are rarer than others. There are thousands of kittens in the game. Some of them breed fast, others are slower. CryptoKittyDex keeps track of traits, I think he means, and how common or rare they are. So it's just a silly little game worth $12 million. Tamper-proof cyber currency wallet, hardware wallet, Ledger, just got backdoored by a 15-year-old.
Well, maybe they'd be able to find your password that way.
See, now I'm in trouble with Section 230 without doing anything. Yeah, maybe my wallet's in there. 15-year-old from the UK, Salim Rashid, published on his personal blog a proof of concept code that allowed him to backdoor the Ledger Nano S $100 hardware wallet that the company's marketers say has sold by the millions. Oh, boy. It's a 300-byte long proof of concept. Wow. Good going. Now I have hope for the future.
Go kid.
Young people like this, like Rashid. AMD says we've been talking about this weird, bunch of flaws on AMD chips. And the speculation that the Israeli security firm CTS Labs, which seems to have been created entirely to publicize this issue, they don't have any track record, and only gave AMD 24-hour notice, and apparently tried to make money on the revelation by shorting AMD stock. So there was some concern that I know. There was some concern.
That's like they did this in the medical device community last year. There was a company against St. Jude's. They published a vulnerability in their, I think it was an insulin pump, and then they shorted the stock, and people were like, "Yeah, that's not legit."
Well, so what's going on apparently is some of these security firms, if you don't have a bug bounty, which apparently AMD does not, they want to get paid for their research. They've spent years apparently researching these flaws. They wanted to get paid for the research, so since AMD ain't going to pay them, they short the stock and then announce it. Profit.
Yeah,
but there really is a problem because AMD has now said, "Oh, yeah, we do have this problem, and we're gonna patch this. Nope, we don't expect any performance impact. It's not like the Spectre and Meltdown flaws. It is interesting though because AMD, among other flaws, AMD was using a chip from a company called ASM Media, and these chips had hardware backdoors built into them by the Taiwanese company that made the chips. AMD didn't know that or didn't care or whatever, but they put them in their systems on a chip, and that means they had hardware backdoors. It's not a serious flaw in the sense that you have to have root access. You have to have administrator access to do it. So somebody presumably would have some pretty good access to your system already. Nevertheless, they're real, and AMD is going to fix them. I agree. It's kind of... First of all, there's a standard in the community, security community, that you give a company 90 days at least to fix the flaw before you publicize it. And it is kind of, come on, shorten the stock, really?
This is kind of a self-regulatory option for these guys, right? So having a community that says, dude, that's not cool. That might work. Who knows? Who knows?
I wonder... it doesn't really hurt AMD to short the stock as much as it hurts the investors.
Or the people with the chips with the security flaw that is now open to everyone for a while.
Those guys too. This is a really weird story. And again, this might go back to FOSTA SESTA. Child abuse imagery has been found within the blockchain, which means everybody who has a wallet, a Bitcoin wallet on their computer has this imagery in the blockchain.
A wallet or the entire chain?
Well, in order to have a Bitcoin wallet, not one stored on Coinbase or somewhere out there, but on your computer, you have to download the entire blockchain.
Oh, the entire? Oh.
The entire blockchain. Oh. That's how it works.
So now you're a criminal, dude.
Apparently 1,600 files were stored in Bitcoin's blockchain. One of the files, at least 8 were sexual, including one thought to be an image of child abuse, and 2 that contained links to child abuse content, 142 of which linked to dark web services. Now, I don't know even how you get into that imagery. I mean, it's hidden in plain sight, I guess. But yeah, that's messed up. So I don't know what you should do. It creates a moral and legal quandary.
Yeah.
Do you think
it was subversion?
No, I think that somebody, people said, "Oh, look."
The people who invest in blockchain. Come on, man.
You could stick it in here.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, that's why IBM created their Hyperledger efforts. It's not IBM. IBM worked with the other companies to create Hyperledger because companies were afraid of putting some of their data in the blockchain because they were like, well, people can access this. This is also why whenever I talk to anybody in the SEC, financial crimes, or the DEA, they were ecstatic about the blockchain because they were like, oh, people are creating digital records of all of their illicit transactions. This is wonderful. I couldn't design a better system. So there's a lot of misconceptions around what this is and what you're sharing.
So I have the blockchain on a couple of my computers because I have a Bitcoin wallet. I've been trying to remember this is the one I can't get into. I guess I'll delete it. I can't get into it anyway. I don't know.
Have you gone to a hypnotist yet? I want you to go to a hypnotist to get your.
That's a good idea. I like that.
Okay.
Go back. You're going back, Leo. You're going back.
I remember.
You're younger now.
It'd be a good idea to take Bitcoin. And then I thought,
because I do everything.
Yeah, I do. I try.
I throw
everything.
money away. That's what I do for a living.
I don't like money. I don't want any.
Karsten, well done, Karsten. Well done.
What did he do? I didn't even see it. My eyes are closed. What are you doing to me, Karsten?
Oh, nice.
Plattsburgh, New York. Is that near you? Plattsburgh, New York. Is that upstate?
Booties.
Well, they have hydroelectric, which means their electricity is only 4.5 cents.
This is fascinating.
Per kilowatt hour. Cheap enough to make it actually, I guess, a good place to mine Bitcoin.
Oh, I loved this story. The people in Washington and the people in Nowheresville, New York. Yes.
So the city council of Plattsburgh is worried because a bunch of people are moving in, city slickers. They're moving in to mine Bitcoin on our cheap electricity.
And then what happens to the price of electricity?
Goes up. I've been hearing a lot of complaints that electric bills have gone up by $100 or $200. You can understand why people are upset. You should see my electric bill if you think that's a bad. Oh, man.
My electric bill.
Hi. Yeah, look at Stacey's electric bill. But we live in in expensive electricity towns.
16.5 cents per kilowatt hour.
I rest my case. You couldn't Bitcoin mine in Austin?
No.
So
unless it was winter and I wanted to generate my own heat.
There is. We saw this on Security Now. There's a Norwegian or a Scandinavian company selling a space heater that mines Bitcoin.
Or maybe, I ran into this at CES. I thought this was awesome.
Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's a Bitcoin miner that you can use to heat your house.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do in the summer?
You sweat.
Open the windows.
Yeah.
Evaporative cooling. It's so hot right now.
Anyway, can you turn down the heat? No, I can't afford it.
I can't afford it. They have turned off Bitcoin mining in the city. The city council voted to ban it for 18 months. So, So I don't know how many Bitcoin miners moved into Plattsburgh, but
is that I guess there's no legal problem with that, right? It's not like a free speech or anything. It's a business activity they choose not to have.
That's what it is. A business activity. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could argue you could zone it. So like some of these, I'm trying to think how you would.
It's a reasonable problem.
Wholesale, a type of.
Plattsburgh only gets, they have an allotment from the St. Lawrence hydroelectric dam of 104 megawatts per month. The biggest Bitcoin mining operation that moved in, a Puerto Rican company called Coinmint, used 10% of that in January and February. They used 10% of their power allotment. In January, Plattsburgh went over the power allotment and had to buy electricity on the open market.
Ooh.
That's why they had to pay more.
Well, that's an interesting,
it's reasonable, I think. Yeah.
It is reasonable, but that doesn't mean it's against the law, which is a very different thing.
If I were this company that moved all the way from Puerto Rico to Plattsburgh.
Well, but if you knew how the power was structured, then that might not be a great move.
You did it for 4.5 because of the 4.5 cents a kilowatt.
Yeah, if you didn't understand
anymore. Yeah.
Right. But
I don't know what happened. This is another one from WRAL. They're really breaking the stories this week.
Yeah, why are they suddenly up? I know.
This is another one.
Maybe they did something to get on your Google list.
No.
Maybe they just optimize Google News.
This is a real story from Raleigh.
Oh, okay.
To find suspects, police quietly turned to Google. I don't know what the upshot of this is.
Yeah, I didn't know what this story was trying to be.
So they're
scary.
What
is it these days?
There were shots fired, and I don't know, something happened. There were shootings, and the police in Raleigh said, "Wait a minute, if we could only get the cell phone records of everybody who was in the vicinity, we'd have some idea who to talk to." So they drew shapes around the crime scenes on a satellite image, marking the coordinates on the map. They convinced a Wake County judge they had enough probable cause to order Google to hand over account identifiers on every single cell phone that entered that area during certain times. They've done it at least 4 times last year. Search warrants demanding Google accounts of, so it's not the phone number, it's not from the cell carrier, but Google's, if you have an Android phone, or actually even if you don't, if you have an Apple phone, right, the maps might be telling Google where you are. You'll just look at your location tracker on Google and it knows where you are. What I don't know is if Google handed them over or not.
So what is it? Is it a dragnet? What is?
It's a fishing expedition. It shouldn't be. It's not legal. But the judge approved it. Now, if Google wanted to fight it, I think they could probably make a pretty good case for it. The ACLU says...
What's the difference between asking Google for this and asking a phone company for this?
In both cases, it's a fishing expedition. The theory is that you aren't allowed to go out and ask for information about people who didn't commit a crime in order to kind of net the guy who did. Right?
Now, but did Google... How could you write this story and not know what Google did here?
Well, you should ask that question of WRAL Public Records reporter Tyler Dukes.
Well, no, I mean, it's interesting that police are trying to get to this data, but then, so that's newsworthy. I just don't understand what happened, and that's part of it.
I'm confused by this too.
But
it's very cool. WRAL has a public records reporter. That's nice.
That is nice. So,
sorry.
Because no, I'm just.
I don't know. The only thing missing is what's Google's response to this. He's got a lot of detail about this.
Because you can say, this isn't like a FISA court thing, so you can actually say that you've got the warrants, right? That someone's
true, right?
So I don't understand why, because it says in the article that Google had no way to tell people that they were being swept up in this, but I actually think you would. But again, I'm not an expert here. I want to talk to this man's editor.
Well, here's the only thing he says. Google declined to say whether it released data in any of the Raleigh cases, and it's unclear from the search warrants exactly what information was seized or whether it has been effective in moving the investigations forward. Of the 4 cases, only one has resulted in an arrest. So Google's not saying, which sounds to me
Google's
like
not saying. So then we have to wait for the court.
Yeah, the trial.
And they may not put it in the trial.
No.
That's weird.
Because they didn't, that's part of, in a way, that would be a litmus test of whether this is legit or not. If it's not used in evidence at trial, then you were asking for a lot of information that wasn't relevant.
Well, but then you wouldn't have a reason to sue either. So if this guy gets caught and he doesn't understand that this was how he possibly was gotten caught, then he'd have to sue, like he'd have to appeal basically, sorry, not sue, appeal his on like bad evidence collection. And there's a word for that is an actual legal word, and I don't know what it is. But if they don't use it in the trial, then he wouldn't actually have grounds to appeal based on that, which means it could continue until someone does. I mean, this was what happened with the Stingray type stuff.
Right.
They were doing it, but they just didn't ever use the evidence.
Right.
And
they
so
just use it in their investigation to help them get leads and then continue on. It really comes down to the judge doing the warrant and then Google fighting it. And I'm a little disappointed that Google hasn't said whether they are honoring the warrant or fighting it. I think they should fight it.
Well, maybe they will after people pay attention to it.
Okay, we're paying attention. We're paying attention. I think we've talked long and hard about all sorts of things. I don't know what to say about Facebook or privacy, and I just
you've said it as Howard Stern says when he wants to get rid of a guest. You've said it all.
I've said it all, my friend. That just means get out of here. We're done.
It does. It does. That's what he says.
You said it all, my friend. Get out of here. Let's wrap things up with. How about you, Jeff? Let's start with you this time. A number this week.
All right. So minor note, but I think noteworthy that Amazon has surpassed Alphabet for the first time to become the second most valuable company in the world.
Wow. After Apple.
Yep.
And Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world.
Yep.
Oop.
Market capitalization of $768 billion.
So it's a race to see who's the first $1 trillion
company. Yes.
Who do you think? Will it be Apple? Will it be Amazon? Will it be Google?
Whose ego will be satisfied first?
Hey, how many commas is trillion? That's a lot of commas.
I don't think it's going to be Facebook real quick.
No. I think it's Facebook might be going
I don't think it's going to be Twitter.
Hey, did I talk about my S9 last week? I think I did, yes.
Yes.
I'm liking
Briefly.
it.
What do you think? You liking it?
Yeah. Now I have a longitudinal study of a whole week.
Are you putting your finger in the right spot by now?
Yeah. And it has I showed you the face recognition. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful screen. I quite like it. And you know what I like? It's kind of the anti-iPhone. It has a SD card. It has a headphone jack. It has a fingerprint reader. It's like they decided anything Apple does, we're going to do the opposite. There's no notch.
That's actually smart.
Yeah. It's an alternative, right? Stacey, do you have a pick of the week?
I read about this on Lifehacker, and so I tried it. Not because I have 2 children, but because I and my husband have juvenile silly fights all the time. So I thought this was fun.
Do you have pillow fights? What kind of fights do you have? Oh,
we just snip at each other over silly things, like
How to
not
load the
actually the
dishwasher.
way to load dishwasher, but those kind of things.
Yeah.
We do.
Every
My house,
couple
we do
does.
complain about that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is just part of living with people.
You could ask, hey, Echo, what's the right way to load the dishwasher?
Whatever she says is the answer that comes back.
Hold on. Let's see what happens. What's the right way to load the dishwasher?
Yeah. That's silly. Sorry.
What's the right way to load the dishwasher?
Nobody
Google
has
also
anything
gives
to
up.
say.
No one's wading into that fight.
No, not
Anyway.
going to get involved in
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Yes.
So
what kinds of things do you debate?
Called Kids Court.
Kids Court.
So yes, this is for when your children are. That's not fair. He took that. This, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
You can have your kids. You put information about your kids in here. They do not get it, or the company does not track it or keep it because of COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act. But it basically has the kids make their case, and it makes a ruling, and then it provides a silly punishment for your kids, like hold an ice cube in your hand for X number of minutes, or hop on one leg while singing the alphabet backwards.
Ooh, it's harsh.
These are basically silly, fun, and I thought it was fun.
Nice.
And I don't have anything other than that to say. This did not solve any burning issues in our house, but if a fight gets too tense, you can be like, I know, we'll take it to kids' court. Dun, dun, dun.
I think you should. I'm going to nominate you for the Echo Skill of the Week.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be good?
To provide that?
Every week.
It could.
Yeah.
Now, next week, I am going to have a Nest doorbell and a Yale Google Lock. So you may want to not. I just pull from. Oh, and we talk about it on our show. So if you listen to our show, you're going to be bored out of your mind. But I'm proposing for people to do an IoT spring cleaning, which is what I did for 10 hours.
10 hours?
I have a lot of gadgets. Yours may not take this long, but what I did is I ended up going through all of my devices and I said, is this working? Is this not working? I went through my Eero to see what was on my network. I found some things that I don't use at all that I was like, oh, let's take this off. And then after you take things off your network, and I deleted the accounts and I reset some of the devices, then I went through things that I want to use but still don't work. And I deleted all of those. And then I put everything back on the network. And then I deleted everything from Amazon and everything from Google. And I rebuilt all of my automations and routines. Is this a pain in the butt? Yes. But everything except one device works now, which is a far cry from how my house usually is, which is like, my husband's like, I used to be able to turn on this light. What happened? I'm like, I don't know.
I think you better go to kids' court on that one.
Yeah.
Your Honor. I'm sorry. You're going to be standing on one leg for some time, Ms. Stacey Higginbotham.
You need to make that light work. Okay. You're right.
I don't know what happened. It just stopped working.
No.
Did I show you my blood pressure reading thing on the S9 last week?
No.
I can't remember. I didn't. I showed it on the new screensavers. So there's a hidden ability in the Galaxy S9. I think. I'm not sure. So the S9 has always had this feature, which nobody ever talks about. Underneath the flash on the camera, there's a heart rate sensor. And you get I think, actually very accurate heart rate reading from it. It flashes.
There are apps that you can do that with any phone's light.
Yeah, with the camera. But this is much more accurate. Samsung Health uses it to do the reading. And I think it actually is very accurate because I've compared it to other sensors and so forth. But, you wouldn't want to do it while exercising. You have to put your finger on here and all of that. But what I didn't know is apparently that in the S9 is also capable, and I wonder if this is true, of doing blood pressure readings. And
have you tried it, or what do you wonder?
Well, so
here's
the reason here's why I wonder it. There is a University of California at San Francisco health project called My BP Lab, and you sign up for it, and of course you're giving them all your information. But the idea is you take 3, and they call them blood pressure readings. But here's the funny thing: they don't show you what your blood pressure is. So it might be. You have to calibrate it, or maybe it's not that calibrated. But the idea is you 3 times a day, you take your blood pressure. Again, they don't tell you what it is. What they do tell you is it's 8% below your baseline or 4% above your baseline. But they don't say the actual number. And my suspicion is that's because it's not accurate. Although they do ask you when you first sign up if you have a blood pressure cuff, and then they ask you to calibrate. So maybe it is. Again, it's a study with the University of California, San Francisco, which is fairly reliable. They say it allows blood pressure to be directly measured by the smartphone without any external hardware. UCSF is going to get information about stress and blood pressure levels throughout the day. One aim of the study is to optimize My BP Lab to provide contextualized and scientifically informed feedback so users will be able to get better understanding of their stress and blood pressure levels and manage their health more effectively. So
okay. You want to learn about, I actually did a blood pressure cuff review for the Wirecutter. And as part of that, I learned a lot about how blood pressure cuffs work. So do you
Are they
really want
accurate?
answers? It depends. So the most accurate is going to be the arm cuff that puffs up because they're actually measuring pressure in your arm.
An sphygmomanometer.
Yes, thank you for saying those
Yes.
words. What these do is it's kind of like the wrist. I'm assuming, I am making some assumptions.
Yeah.
This is probably closer to what the wrist monitors are measuring.
Okay.
And in that case, what they're measuring, what they're measuring is then run through an algorithm that they have correlated to a good blood pressure. So it all depends on how good your algorithm is, both
how much data
in general and how it reacts to your particular body.
Right.
So, because it's a generic algorithm. So that's one. And then two, you have to take your blood pressure for accurate readings. You actually have to, there's a very specific way you should take it. And you have to be seated. You can't be talking.
Say. Both feet's on the ground, no movement, no talking, and your hand has to be at heart level. They say that in the app.
So that's good that they're telling you that. Because even like the doctor's office, I can't tell you how many times the nurse is talking to me while she's taking my blood pressure. I'm like, oh. So yes. So there you go. It may work for you. It may not.
Well, I have one of these cardio QARDIO.
Oh, that was one of the worst ones when I did the testing.
Great to know. All right, because that's the one I have. So I won't. So you think an Omron, which is they've been around forever. I have a more traditional Omron.
The Omron. What? Google the wire cutter blood pressure.
You said the Omron Series 10 with Bluetooth is the best.
There you go. Yeah. That's the one.
Mine doesn't have Bluetooth, but it's just like that. It's just it's older.
Yeah, I mean I don't know.
At the doctor's office, they calibrate it all the time. I mean, they're really always making sure it's accurate. So the other thing is your blood pressure varies wildly throughout the day.
Well, yes.
So that's why, although if this were a reliable measurement on this S9, that would be hugely valuable, I think, to people in general.
Well, and there is value if it's
a relative value. It's a
relative value over time. Thank you.
And that's what they're giving you. That's what they're saying. They're saying based on your baseline, which you get provided to us, you're 8% above that, you're 4% below that. Your blood pressure is a little high, it's a little low, that kind of thing. I think that's actually as useful as it gets. Because I go to the doctor and he measures it, and that's the official measurement, right? Of course, it's always higher at the doctor's office because I'm scared. I have white coat hypertension.
Yeah, so get your Omron, measure your thing first thing in the morning and for a couple of days.
So the cardio is the least accurate. That's the one.
Was it the least? I was like, it was not a good one.
Karsten, did she hate the cardio? It's so convenient because it's so small and it works with an iPhone and it's wireless and all that. But I have some other ones as well. Because I have slightly high blood pressure, so I've always monitored it a little bit.
Oh,
it's lower now that I work with you and Jeff.
Until we talk about certain topics.
This show is the #1 source of stress in my life.
All right, Jeff. High five.
You're killing me, Stacey. You're killing me.
I would hate that. I don't think we ended up. I didn't run the cardio through the biggest. I'm trying to remember now. As you can see, there were 10 of them.
We have the article. I'm sure I can find out. Yeah.
Scroll down because I feel like it was awkward to use, and it. Hey, that's my arm. Look at that, you guys. Sorry.
You know, it's cute. This is one of those things where you'd be insane to take this article on. You've got to do so much testing that normally they would do this with, a dozen people in a lab. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, so
you said I'm going to just do this all myself?
No, I did individually test each one, and then I think I ran it through some friends, but I brought it to the University of Texas nursing school.
You are such a good wow.
So, and for 2 hours, it was a little shorter because they had just had the murder on campus. So this was whenever that was. So
hey, I know you're busy right now, but yeah.
Yeah, but they got extra credit. So it was 20 nursing students and 3 actual professors. And we actually ran through, the hardest part was actually making sure everyone tried everything and wrote down their thoughts. So
oh yeah, here they are, the student nurses.
So when you said the wire cutter thing, how many hours you spent doing it? How many hours did it add up to?
I would have to add. I would have to.
You don't want to know. I'm telling you.
Don't they always say at the beginning of the stories, we spent 80 hours looking at...
Oh, they do, don't they?
That's because they used to pay by the hour.
Oh.
So
it says, after spending 20 hours researching more than 50 blood pressure monitors, interviewing medical professionals, and testing 10 finalists with a group of nursing professors and students, we can say the best. This is why I love the Wirecutter.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and I admire you so much for doing this. That's a lot of work.
I thought it'd be kind of fun, but it did suck. I love the Wirecutter, but doing the Wirecutter's standards and stories...
Oh, yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
It's like Consumer Reports cannot be a fun place to work.
Right. Your blood
I used to
pressure.
work there.
What?
You did?
I used to work for Consumers Union. It was my one PR thing.
Yeah. They're the publishers of the Consumers Report. I love Consumers
Yeah. So
Union.
I worked on the campaign to get your prescription for eyeglasses from your optometrist so you could go on the web or anywhere. It was before the web.
You won.
So we won on that one.
You won. Every time I go to the eye doctor now, they print out a prescription and they give it to me and then grit their teeth.
So this was when I discovered that the quotes and press releases, oh my gosh, you guys, they are made up. As a fledgling journalism student, I walked in and I'm like, hey, can I interview you? Because I've got to write this press release up. He's like, what? I was like, oh, I need a quote about why we're doing this.
You write it and then run it by me.
I was like, oh my God.
I just want to say I write my own quotes. I stopped nipped that in the bud. I said, nobody's writing my quotes. It has to be in my language.
Well, I've had to write other people's quotes. I hate
writing other people's quotes.
I hate it.
It feels so dishonest. I was just like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's standard practice. I mean, it's not that you write something that they wouldn't say. You write it and then you say, is this okay? And they say yes or no. But it's still.
But then it's quoted in the media as if the person actually said this.
Yes. Yeah. The fact that I, as a journalism student, could barely stomach my PR advocacy at Consumers Union.
Shame.
You went over. Yeah, you really are a journalist. Shame. She's in the dark side. Yeah, but Consumers Union, come on.
Good call.
You say that cardio has a poor accuracy rating.
It has a poor accuracy rating, and I think it was difficult to turn off. Like thinking about everyone else.
It's kind of weird. The UI is kind of weird.
The UI was not conducive to everyone.
Yeah.
It was harder than it needed to be, I thought.
You say it seemed accurate in my initial test, but because it won't turn off until it's properly closed, it tends to run out of batteries very easily.
There you go.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, some of these were better with people who were skinny versus people who were overweight. So that was something that was interesting.
Us fatsos, we need extra large cuffs.
Well, I was not going to.
I'm not fat. I'm buff. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I will bid you a fond farewell. Stacey Higginbotham, you catch her work at StaceyOnIoT.com. She also does the Stacey on IoT podcast with Kevin Toffel every week. She's at GigaStacey on the Twitter. Jeff Jarvis is at BuzzMachine.com, and he's, of course...
Not to go out with the snowblower.
Are you going to do that? No, you don't use a snowblower.
Well, the guy who does our driveway is gone for 2 weeks. So I'm going to have to do it.
Dude, you have AFib. You cannot shovel snow.
I'm not shoveling. I'm using the blower.
Don't you have a family member who can do this for you?
No, it's him and the cats and your wife.
Yeah. Get your wife out there.
Your daughter's still. Yeah, get your wife out there. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if my husband was going to keel over from a heart attack, I'd shovel the snow.
Shoveling snow, at least when I lived back east, was the number one cause of heart attacks.
But I'm not shoveling. I'm pushing the damn. Or it's. I mean, it's a big one. It's a monster snowblower. I'm trying to figure out how to get a selfie of myself with the snowblower.
I want to see this. Nice.
Yeah. Make your wife do it.
Yeah. Thank you both for being here. I do stay safe in the snow, Jeff. I'm sorry. Nor'easter number 4, Toby.
Yep. Four nor'easters in 2 weeks, I think.
And Stacey, try to enjoy the Grackles and Nuthatches.
Yeah, your damn sunlight, Stacey.
Swifts.
It is nice. I'm going to be up on the roof tonight with my margarita.
And your queso? Will there be queso?
Just shush.
Jeff, if you're coming for is it Isage?
No, I'm not. I'm going to be in Perugia.
Oh, golly. Now I feel terrible. He has to go all the way to Perugia, Italy. That's news. What is that? Newsgeist? What is that you do there?
That's the Perugia Journalism Festival.
Okay.
Newsgeist is going to be in Lisbon.
Oh, nice.
and Buenos Aires.
I'm glad I don't live in Austin. I would die for a heart attack because the food there is so good. I would just not be able to stop eating. Barbecue,
welcome to the club.
Queso. Oh,
you just have to exercise more.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We do this show every Wednesday. It's kind of the last show of my week. Every Wednesday about 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern, 20:30 UTC. If you want to watch live, we'd love it. Just tune in twit.tv/live. Join us in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. If you'd like to join us in the studio like Paul and Lori did, they're visiting us for the most scenic place in America. According to Good Morning America? Wow, well, that must be true. Lake Ann, Michigan.
Yeah, it's actually
Sleeping Bear? Okay, whatever. You know, you Michiganders, you know what we're talking about. You know.
What are people from Michigan called?
Michiganders.
Really?
Yeah, I know. That's kind of embarrassing.
It is kind of, yeah.
You got Texans, they're
it's
Michiganders.
Okay.
Oh, he's a Texan, so it's all right. Nice to have you, Paul and Lori. If you want to do that, email tickets at twit.tv. No charge. We just want to know ahead of time and make sure we can have a seat put out for you. You can also get
Theo wears pants.
Yeah. I get the memo every morning. Yeah, there'll be people in studio. You better wear your pants today. Oh, man. I was going to wear slippers. You can also get in any version of any show we do on demand. We've got audio. We've got video. We've got high def, low def, medium def, all at the website twit.tv/twig for this show, twit.tv/twig, or wherever you get podcasts. We need a new picture for this week in Google.
I was going to say, Karsto, I thought you changed that picture.
Yeah, because I see it's
it's
Elgin and Jarvis, and it's in the old studio, and we can do better. We'll get a. Did we take any pictures when Stacey was here? We'd like to have live people in the studio, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, sometime I'll come up again.
It's your show now, and now that she's met me twice, she's not so afraid. All right. And we're going to get some of your friends from Austin on the show, I believe.
Yes.
Like
from
Wendy,
the Austin
like
event,
Wendy
or actual
Nather,
people?
Wendy Nather from a duo. We're trying to get her on. Wesley, we're trying to get on. Is his name Wesley? Yeah, Wesley.
Wesley Faulkner?
Yeah.
What's he going to talk about?
And it doesn't matter. He's a nice guy.
He's
That's
a nice
all that
guy.
matters. He's a nice guy. He used to work at AMD. He knows
He did.
tech.
That's how I know Wesley.
Right. And Bo Woods, we're going to try to get him on. We're going to get all the people we met down there in Austin. That was a lot of fun. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time on Twig.